Good afternoon and welcome to the first session of the Digital Construction Summit 2022, brought to you by Construction Management, BIM Plus, and Global Construction Review, plus our partners, Bentley Systems, Coins, Mail Manager, Plan Radar, and the CIOB. This session is entitled BIM's Future Now, the Information Management Evolution, in association with Mail Manager. This is the first webinar in a series of 5 that makes up this year's summit. The other 4 are digital construction's role in making net zero a reality with Plan Radar on the 2nd November at 11 AM, boosting productivity with tech, the law of marginal gains with Coins on the 2nd November at 2:30, the golden thread, best practice towards compliance on the 3rd of November at 2:30, and the 5th and final webinar will be from construction to operations, NHS Scotland's information management journey with Bentley Systems on the 10th of November at 11 AM. Our programme today is, as stated, BIM doesn't stand still. It's evolving into information management, and every part of the built environment needs to walk the new talk. Our speakers will help you understand what this evolution means and how to implement it. A case study from Scotland will reveal how information management is being used and what benefits are being realised. And there'll be a Q&A session at the end. This afternoon, you will hear from Casey Rutland, Vice Chairman of NEMA, or as we used to know it, the UK BIM Alliance, Paul Dodd, Senior Associate Director of the Scottish Futures Trust, and Lucy Pryor, Sales Director of Mail Manager. I'm your chair, Justin Stanton, Editor of BIM Plus. Before I hand over to Casey, there's some housekeeping to remind you of. Please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions. The panel will, I should say you can ask those questions as yourself or anonymously. The panel will address the questions during the Q&A session after all the presentations have finished. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand via the original registration link later today. This session is worth 1 hour's CPD credits. Okay, that's enough of that. I'll stop sharing my screen, and Casey, it's over to you.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you to you and the whole team at DCS for inviting me to present at this webinar. In the effort of trying to explain what evolution is and why we've moved from BIM to IM, I've also evolved this presentation since the original date it was supposed to be, to include a little section about what NEMA is. So it's quite timely, quite opportunistic time to discuss a little bit briefly about what that is and what it is we're doing and how we're evolving that identity. So whether this animation comes across or not, we have a new identity, we have a new brand, and it's not just the logo and a fancy graphic. It's very much about a different set of behaviours, and that's drawn from understanding that the discussions and the mechanisms that we've had so far in going from and talking to people about BIM is that it's got us so far, but we've kind of hit a stumbling block in terms of progressing and reaching further. So we have evolved. I'm not going to do the intro, Justin's done that very nicely. To a different way of describing or engaging a wider audience when it comes to information management, and our primary role as NEMA is to promote the use of the UK BIM framework. So what we're saying is that better information management across the whole of the built and natural environment is our aim. So we need to extend far beyond our echo chamber of the same voices, the same people saying the same things and listening to the same things, and reach further afield to other parts of our industry in terms of whole life cycle, not just design and construction as it has often been pigeonholed into, but also all actors and stakeholders within various different parts of that process. So this is a slimmed down version of the launch presentation, because we need to focus more on the information management part of it. So we, as the UK BIM Alliance we've evolved to better serve the industry and better promote that message and communicate that message to people. So what the hell is NEMA? What does it mean? It's not an abbreviation, an initialization. It is a word. It's the Greek version of the word that we've used. It does exist in other cultures as well, but it has its origins in our purpose as a Greek word that means thread. It also quite neatly happens to have IM in the middle of it for information management, but that's not part of the reason why we chose it. It's just a very nice, happy accident, if you like. So NEMA is the new identity of the UK BIM Alliance, including Building Smart UK and Ireland. Now, since 2015, Building Smart UK and Ireland, of which I'm chair, has been part of the UK BIM Alliance, but the relationship between the two organisations wasn't necessarily appreciated by the wider industry. So we're reinforcing that now. And through a series of branding tools and brand guidelines, we'll be supporting not only Building Smart UK and Ireland, but other projects, other organisations, other communities through the use of what you see on screen now. So NEMA has been powering Building Smart UK and Ireland since 2015 for 7 years and will continue to do so. So those activities that Building Smart do will be supporting the activities of NEMA and vice versa. And hopefully you'll see through the website and other social media channels that that relationship and the activities that are happening there are much more visible and integrated between the two organisations, but much more accessible to the wider industry. So that really is the aim, is trying to get rid of this idea that the UK BIM Alliance were BIM police. Weren't. We're just trying to promote best practice, and that's continuing. We are continuing to promote best practice whilst changing behaviours in some ways in the way we communicate to avoid being seen as BIM police. Our ultimate vision as NEMA is a thriving and sustainable built and natural environment transformed by exploiting purpose-driven data. And we know that's quite a lofty goal, but it's one that has length and longevity. It's not an easy task. It's going to be, there's lots of people going to be coming and going, lots of organisations coming and going, lots of government initiatives coming and going, but we're still hopefully going to be there as a backbone to promoting and using, providing different support to various different parts of the industry. What you see on screen right now is our 5 hero words, and they're not just words themselves. These are activities and behaviours that anyone involved in NEMA, and it's a pro bono volunteer organisation, anyone involved would be seen to be doing one of these things. So whether it's inspiring industry or individuals, whether it's influencing them, influencing government organisations, the drafting of standards, the creation of guidance, whatever it happens to be, connecting people, connecting organisations and communities that are doing one thing that we don't have the time to do, but we can lean on the support of them to be able to do that. And the supporting piece is a core part of what the UK BIM Alliance was doing in providing guidance written by the industry for industry to enable them to find their way through the ISO 19650 suite. And ultimately, that leads to transformation of the industry. So we are trying to get that data-driven approach across and through all manner of different activities and stakeholders within industry. So our mission then is to inspire, influence, connect and support everyone active in the built environment and enable them to better manage information that's vital to the needs of our times. And we're already seeing that now. So we're seeing the process of BIM as outlined in ISO 19650 and the UK BIM framework really becoming part of an enabler to solving the daily challenges that we have, whether that's decarbonisation, whether that's understanding the material flow, lead times and quantities of things that we need, or whether that's fire and life safety. There's lots of things that are very key on people's agendas right now that better management of information can help to solve as part of that process. So as what we see as being trusted advisors, we'll facilitate the implementation and integration of practical information management practices across built and environmental infrastructure. So we are looking to, as we said earlier, influence various different groups and continue and strengthen that influence, whether that be standards writing or writing guidance or other initiatives that we'll come on to in a minute. And this is really where we need to get to. This is part of our ethos, of very, it's a key sentence provided by our communities leadership team, that with trusted data, great things happen. And I think that's really key for the industry to understand, is that once we have trusted data that's for a particular purpose, that can be used, can be leveraged to make real decisions on that have a proper impact on projects, on organisations, on individuals, on the nation and sustainability perhaps. So our goals is to provide leadership across the UK BIM framework. As I said before, one of our primary aims is to promote the use of the UK BIM framework. That's not going anywhere. It is still there. It is co-coordinated by BSI and ourselves with input from various other organisations, and you'll start to see more communications coming out about that very soon. And we'd like to drive a data-centric attitude to the built environment, and to inform, collaborate, and add value to those other transformation initiatives. In terms of facilitation, the organisational structure is that we have support services. So there are a few people that we do need funds to pay, and they very much provide those support services, whether it's to do with financing, invoicing, billing, monitoring, and the admin of the grunt work behind the scenes. But they are there to support all these verticals that you see that are reaching out into industry. So whether that's impact reporting, the projects that we do, and the UK BIM framework guidance is one of those projects, the resources that we create. We've got a new work stream that focuses on upskilling, so it's very much coming into play now. Building Smart UK and Ireland, as we spoke about earlier, and the UK BIM framework itself, all supported by various different people within NEMA as an organisation, both paid and unpaid. And then the horizontals that cut across those are really the things that we have going on through volunteers and pro bono efforts in terms of program management, change management, impact monitoring, the governance model that sits around it, and our current legal entity within Syria that enables this whole thing to survive as long as it has done. The strategy that we've developed with the core team and spread amongst the communities to make sure we're all heading in the right direction. And then funding. We've recently appointed the services of what we call a funding manager, who's looking out for various different grants and opportunities to bring in more resources, more funds, so we can do more as an organisation, because at the moment we rely on the very generous donations of our patrons. So with our new identity, as I said, it comes a new online presence. Hopefully you would have seen the new website, wearenema.im. We've also switched over to We Are NEMA on our other social media channels as existing, whether that be Twitter or Instagram or our YouTube channels. We've also now got a TikTok account and a podcast, the first of which was launched, first episode was launched a couple of weeks ago. So take a look at that, at wearenema.im. There's a Linktree link on the website that will take you to, or on the Twitter account that will take you to wherever you need to get to listen to all of these things. And it's already working. And what we've seen so far is we're already engaging with people that hadn't engaged with this previously. So there are messages coming in. There are people asking when the next podcast is. Can they recommend someone to join that podcast? And all sorts of really exciting things of people we just haven't engaged with so far. So we're happy that that's working the way it's intended, but we know there's busy times ahead. So when it comes to BIM to IM, what do we say? Our message really is that we're all information managers. We just need to be better at it. So a standardized way of managing your information, creating information is much more relevant to many more people. So information management has always been the focus. The ISO 19650 suite, the UK BIM framework, is information management using BIM. So the information management is being the focus now. We're shifting over to that as the focus. And the reason for that is that we can engage many more people by starting the conversation about information management, because it's relevant to product manufacturers, to cost consultants, to owners, operators, to designers, to engineers, to building users or infrastructure users. And it's absolutely relevant to everyone. But that's not to say that BIM's going away. BIM is still there. BIM is still relevant. It's still part of it. It's just that we don't start the conversation about that. And the reason for that is, if anyone's read our BIM to IM piece, and there's links on the BIM Plus website on the news, is that BIM has an image. BIM has an image of being about 3D models, being about a certain way of creating them and doing those things. And what we're trying to do is to separate ourselves away from that and bring this on board only when it absolutely needs it. So we start the conversation about information management, which is much more relevant to many more people. And then we talk about BIM where we need to, with the right groups of people. And through this, we've been able to engage lots of other people already, whether that be product manufacturers or sustainability groups or data scientist groups, and we'll come on to that in a minute. So it is working. So what we're trying to do is to still communicate the same things that we've always been communicating, but do it in different languages. So tailor the language that we're using to the audience that we're speaking to, because talking in a BIM language to everybody only gets us so far, and it's got us to where we are now. So we need to drop the BIM language, talk to various different stakeholders in their language about our topic. So that's the approach that we're taking, removing the confusion and making it nice and clear for various different stakeholders all around. Part of what we were asked for throughout the whole, as long as I've been involved in UK BIM Alliance, was case studies and success stories. Case studies are notoriously very difficult to get hold of in terms of they take a lot of creation, they take a lot of time to develop and share. But actually what we've got now is a series of success stories, smaller, bite-sized, easily consumable success stories that are searchable on the website. So pop onto the website, hit success stories. There are only 3 there at the moment, but it's better than none. And we are hoping to create a large catalogue of success stories that are easily searchable, so that people can get a little bit of comfort about not being guinea pigs, or understanding that there are opportunities that haven't perhaps noticed before. So there are things on here available to anyone, and I'd put a call out right now to anyone out there who has a success story that they want to share. Get in touch with me afterwards via wearenema.im, and we can get those success stories on there, because we don't want to be precious about it. We want to celebrate the successes of anyone doing anything that's BIM related, information management related, UK BIM framework related, to encourage others to take those steps as well. So we did mention briefly new relationships, new projects and ventures. We do have a new affiliate member, Zero Construct, which is us bringing information management to the topic of decarbonisation. Now, Zero, an amazing organisation, so much passion and thought and work and activity going on there as to how we decarbonise the construction process. And there is absolutely credit to be given to that through the information management process. So we need to formalise that. We do have an event coming up, a joint event with Zero in January. But lots of other things that are going on. In fact, if you go to our communities, our outreach and communities section of the website, when it comes to information management for decarbonisation, it doesn't go to an internal NEMA resource, it goes directly to Zero. So it's building on and connecting with their organisation. We also have our first new international platinum patron as NEMA, Glodon, as a software provider. There's going to be a press release going out about that relationship this week. And also bringing information management to real estate through the Real Estate Data Foundation. Again, another organisation looking specifically at data for the real estate part of the industry. Absolutely vital that they understand where we're coming from and that we understand what they're coming from. And we've got a two-way relationship where we support them and they support our aims also. We also have greater collaboration with the Building Safety Alliance as friends of NEMA. We do have continued influence, obviously, within the UK BIM framework, but also in the Construction Leadership Council via all the digital aspects. And we have published, although before our rebrand, an IFC special report in the AEC magazine, well worth reading. It's written in plain language for as wider audiences as we can possibly get, and that's already been translated by other Building Smart international chapters into their languages because of the success with which they saw it was written in a very sensible plain language. So we do have the opportunity to bring information management as we know it to all of these other initiatives who are all in need of managing their information. Let's just do it all in the same way that we can all contribute to. So in terms of openings and opportunities, we do always need volunteers, experts in any different area to do with anything to do with our built environment when it comes to information management. So either if you want to come on and contribute and take that back to your sector, or whether you want to come and contribute to the daily operation of NEMA, but it really is there to spread the benefits of the UK BIM framework. So I think I'm just over a minute or so, but if you scan the QR code, you'll get to all of our various different social media channels, but I'll hang around and answer the questions at the end. So I'll finish there. Over to you.
Thanks, Casey. That was great. So we'll hand over now to Paul, if you're ready to share your screen and camera on and mic on.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. Excellent. I'll make a start. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation to speak at this afternoon's webinar. on the area of information management and the evolution of information management. So for today, I was going to share with you, as Justin mentioned, a case study of our work within Scotland and an initiative that we've been developing, which is what we call the Standard Information Management Plan. Just by way of quick introduction, Justin touched on it earlier, I work with an organisation, Scottish Futures Trust. We are a Scottish government agency supporting Scottish government deliver its policy and objectives around infrastructure within Scotland, both investment and maintenance, across the whole life cycle. And since 2015, I've actually led Scottish Government's BIM programme on behalf of Scottish Government and with Scottish Government. And we've been on a journey ourselves and an evolution ourselves around how we embed information management within the design, construction, and ultimately operation of our buildings. So I thought I would start with our own journey to explore this topic of information management and the evolution of it. So in terms of our own journey itself, we started the journey back in 2014, actually. We delivered the BIM programme, as I mentioned, for Scottish Government. We published the strategy in 2015. And from 15 onwards, we supported the sector prepare for the implementation of BIM. And the milestone we reached in 2017 was the publication of procurement policy and a BIM guidance portal. And through that time, we learned a lot around how we support public bodies implement BIM and doing that in partnership with industry. And in 2018, we kind of reflected on how far we'd come and kind of next steps. And this is a piece around how we evolved our approach. And we were also aware of the future ISO standards that were here as well. But as well as that, within 2018, there was kind of wider industry issues around buildings, information on those buildings. There was a incident at Edinburgh School, Oxgang School, which raised questions around how much we know about our estate, obviously Grenfell. And within that year as well, there was kind of a growing conversation around performance of our assets. As well as that, in 18, we were aware of a new Scottish Government investment programme around schools. So they announced that 3 billion was to be spent on the learning estate, which was a really positive opportunity. And as well in that year, we were seeing, with our best efforts through guidance, not always were we getting good digital information at the end of projects, and projects sometimes resorted to some maybe more familiar approaches, which is where we kept it more paper-based, which is what we wanted to try and avoid. And the importance of digital good information to support maintenance was a growing conversation at the time. So our thinking evolved around information management, and I suppose the challenges we saw, and it kind of links to what Casey was articulating, is that we developed what we thought was leading guidance, but moving from guidance to implementation is a challenge sometimes for authorities. There's not always the right resources and skills. We found that there was maybe sometimes inefficiencies because authorities generated very bespoke requirements. Could there be some consistency to support the efficiencies there? Language, fundamental, really either brings people with you or acts as a barrier. Obviously, the ISO was appearing, and then sometimes authorities weren't always implementing BIM. So with these lessons, with the world around us at that point, we decided to think about how we took the next step and evolved our approach to information management. And that was done through a bit thinking about implementation more, having a client-side information manager involved in projects, standardizing if we can, language, fundamental in how we worked and operated, obviously embedding the forthcoming standards at the time and trying to embed it within programs. And that program, an approach we took, was the creation of a standard information management plan, as we called it. And the title of it is very key because fundamentally it was about language, about embedding it as another plan within projects that should be adopted. And the vision of the plan was fundamentally about adopting the BIM standards, but doing it in a way that thought about resources, implementation, and the project lifecycle, and doing it with industry and public bodies. So we developed this plan with associated resources, and it was then made a requirement of the forthcoming learning estate investment programme, so a funding condition. So the conditions of funding were that the plan was to be adopted, that the authority had to appoint a client-side information manager, and that there was a clear linkage between the plan and the condition of assets going forward as well. So in the evolution of the information, we create a baseline, the platform upon which to support information management within the school estate. So going back to our journey, there was kind of a new approach, an evolution of our approach back in 2018, which led us to create, in addition to guidance, the plan. So moving from guidance to implementation in 2019, and that plan formed the basis of the phases of the further educational estate programme. So phases 1 and 2, and more recently phase 3. And we've also subsequently maintained updates to the standard information management plan through our ongoing programme support and working groups. So that kind of articulates the journey we've been on and how it's evolved through the course of our own journey. So in terms of the plan itself, there's quite a lot of technical elements to it, but just trying to, again, articulate some of the new thinking that we took at the time. The plan is basically broken into 3 parts. We have an information dashboard, we have a workbook, the core part of articulating the need, and then various teams can adopt. And sitting around the plan itself, we have programme support, programme guidance, and we also have obviously the UK BIM framework and the standards themselves. So that's how it came together. In terms of the title itself, it is a standard information management plan. That area of what could we standardize or provide a level of consistency to support both clients and industry scale and adopt this approach. So a lot of thinking was done around that in the early days. These are some of the earlier slides, and we took 2 schools, for example, with 2 different authorities, and we started to think about areas of information management that were probably going to be bespoke or distinct to that authority. So FM systems, school design, how they procure the building potentially may vary between projects. But we started to explore what could have a level of alignment, and that might be container structures, milestone drops of information. So we started to challenge ourselves about what we could align, and we did this across this. This is an example of a matrix we looked at the time. So how often it may be adopted and the level of similarity. So the RIB Plan of Works is a very highly adopted approach, and it's obviously similar and used all the time. So that obviously is a fundamental part of the plan in terms of milestone stages, and that can be adopted very regularly. But we mapped other elements and thought about different parts of information management that we could either where it currently stood as we saw it, but where it could move to if we started to develop the plan itself. So that was some early thinking. Not everything can be aligned, and there needs to be that level of flexibility within the plan itself. One area of the plan is about milestone exchanges of information, taking the RIBA Plan of Works again here. And what we were challenging authorities and the supply chain to think about was, at a project level, we have an information repository here, but the plan sought to articulate milestone drops. So the final version of information at key stages, and articulating that and formatting that in a way that can get pushed into a client system. And those systems varied, and that's an ongoing discussion that we have. But the red arrow is the key one here, and that is about project information handover and growing the information so that we can create the conditions for effective maintenance through effective digital operation and maintenance information. So that was a key part of the plan. Other areas to flag or highlight in terms of the plan and our thoughts around information management. So a key step change, ensuring that the right resources and skills were in place. We created a standard scope of services for a client-side information manager. Really, really important for the success of this work and adoption. It was also funded as a funding condition, so it was funded as part of the programme. So quite quickly, that allowed for authorities to bring on board the right resources that they needed to adopt the plan itself, which has been really crucial. I mentioned it earlier, but another kind of area we developed was getting a holistic understanding of the project at the start. So to ask the right questions to evolve the plan effectively at the start as well. So we developed what we called a project information strategy dashboard. So the dashboard asks for set information about the project at the very early stages, and it generates this dashboard which starts to articulate what are the milestone drops, who are the parties involved in the project that will support information, and other aspects around kind of information, common data environments or alike. So that was there as a support tool for the start of the process. Another key area that we developed was for container structure. So what we did very early days is develop this. So this is a folder structure, container structure per stage that supply chain can respond to using Uniclass PM codes initially. So this was really helpful for authorities to understand and how it would push into their own systems. So that is another resource. And then a final thing just to capture in terms of key aspects is another area we've been developing hard is what are the maintainable assets and what information we need to maintain the assets within the plan. So there's forums that have developed a maintainable assets list for school, a baseline, and then grading those assets in a way around their criticality, and then attaching what information you need to, so make it proportionate. So it creates a baseline that, again, the authority can flex as they need to. So that's in there as well. Collaboration's been key in the plan. I think a big part of the plan is bringing together authorities and industry to co-develop the plan going forward. So it has had significant uptake through the programme, but out with the programme as well, which has been positive. There is now, in addition, a project information handover working group. So I mentioned earlier our focus of treating that as a key milestone of utilising, capturing all the knowledge of the project team chain to ensure we have a strong, creating those conditions for effective maintenance and management. So this group has been looking at developing consensus around operation and maintenance information, checklists at handover, asset registers, information and document registers. So that group continues to develop that going forward. In terms of benefits, I suppose, again, thinking about how we've evolved the approach to information management, and then picking up Casey's point as well about everybody's an information manager. I think two parts to that. One is everybody needs to contribute to the information across the supply chain. And secondly, it should have value to all parties in the supply chain. So at a client level, obviously, we're needing the right information at the right time. Contractors are needing to ensure that they can understand the risk and coordinate that information requirement effectively. So we did work hard to look at that line of sight from the plan itself at top level down to the supply chain and how the supply chain would feed into it. And that obviously continues, but if we can simplify that, we can obviously improve the quality of the information. In terms of a reflection point, is about solving the challenges throughout the supply chain, not just pushing out information requirements from a client side. So just to close, I suppose hopefully that provides a kind of overview of our own journey around information management and how we've developed our thinking. In terms of our own reflections, I think creating the right conditions for effective information management is vital, and focusing in on that piece at the start is something we've developed and worked on hard. The evolution will continue. We're still refining the plan as we go forward through learning. The plan has developed and enabled a conversation moving from project level to estate level, which has been really important, and using that information in the operational stage. The plan has become like a framework for different threads of information from net zero requirements, from passive house requirements. So it becomes this kind of hub to capture those threads of information that's needed through the project lifecycle. And then finally, the plan we treat, it belongs to all stakeholders. It's kind of that collective leadership, ownership of the plan and influence on the plan as well. And there are other working groups that support the conversation around contractor working groups and client information manager working groups as well, which is key. So hopefully you found that useful to stimulate the conversations and questions later. By all means, do get in touch if you do want to follow up after today's webinar as well. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Brilliant, Paul, thanks very much. Lucy, if you're ready to share your screen, over to you.
Excellent, thank you, Justin. And hi everyone, and thank you very much for joining today. So what I'm going to be covering is giving you guys a little bit more detail on the current construction landscape. I'll be talking more about the evolution of information management in the data-driven world that we're living in today, BIM's role in that, and how it ties into the single source of truth. And then we'll close off with a Q&A session, because I can see there's lots of great questions coming in on the chat. So I guess to start with, the technology landscape globally it is changing at a rapid speed. Construction technology continues to evolve and drive the industry forward to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. Now, the technology advancements are paving the way for digital transformation, particularly within the construction industry. Today, there are numerous examples of how new technology is revolutionizing the construction sector, like Internet of Things, digital twins, and of course, BIM. But obviously, it's no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, and teams either working remotely or in a hybrid working environment, that it's becoming more and more difficult to access project information. And I think we can all agree that those days are gone, or at least limited, where you can just turn around in the office and ask one of your colleagues, you know, can you help me find this email or this document? And what that's meaning for a lot of people is that they just simply don't have access to the information they need and are left out of the communication loop. And that's causing huge problems. With over 333 billion emails sent and received every single day this year, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool in a lot of industries. And it's the one thing that most people manage very differently, which obviously creates a lot of risk for the future. So one of these risks comes in the form of project rework. And a recent study found that 80% of project professionals spent half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs 62 million every year on average. And reworks, it doesn't just waste your time and money, but it causes huge communication breakdowns within your team and with your senior execs and stakeholders. So here at Mail Manager, we recently surveyed over 500 business leaders in the architecture, engineering and construction space, or as we like to call it, which I will be using throughout the presentation today, is the AEC industry. So just as some background, this is an annual report which we undertake, and these are the results from the 2022 report. So first on there is the fact that email remains the king in AEC project management. As a lot of you probably already noticed, email is the most used collaboration tool for project correspondence within the AEC space. Now, 4/5 of the respondents reported that the majority of their project correspondence is via email, and only 1/5 of the respondents use email for project correspondence less than half of the time. Now, when we asked them about their business reliance on email, only 28% of people surveyed say that they were not more reliant on email than they were 12 months ago. And email is particularly important to a project scope change, with 47% of this information sitting in email and 43% residing within formal documents. The second point on here is that 1 in 2 AEC businesses can't easily access their project correspondence. 87% of people who are surveyed were concerned about information visibility and accessibility in their firms. Now, these concerns are highlighted by people increasingly needing to locate that information from past projects, And in fact, just over half the respondents said they were regularly needing to go back to find information from historic projects. And the third on here is that 1/3 of AEC businesses lose critical project information with staff turnover. So less than half of the respondents require employees to file all project-related emails into a centralized location, with 15% of the respondents indicating that no emails are filed across the business, which is quite shocking, which opens obviously the firm up to huge amounts of risk relating to information management. And on top of that, 1 in 3 businesses do not require their staff to file their emails when people leave the business. So effectively, that information is kind of lost. And finally, despite the remote working hype, a hybrid workplace is I guess the new norm for a lot of AEC organizations. So this time last year, 71% of organizations considered remote working their #1 priority in their technology initiatives. Now we look 12 months later, only 11% are continuing their remote working efforts, with 51% of respondents now operating in a complete hybrid work environment. So quite interesting stats on there. Now, as data volumes continue to increase year on year, the disorganized approach to information management can leave project teams feeling quite stressed. And due to the sheer amount of data being created, these manual processes are just not cutting it anymore. So to understand the issue facing businesses, it's really important that we all consider the vast size of data volume that we're being faced with. I mean, in 2020, we pulled a stat that internet users generated 2.5 quintillion bytes of data each day, which is huge. From a business perspective, Forbes found that 95% of surveyed businesses reported the need to manage unstructured data was causing a huge problem for their company, and a great deal of that data came via email. And unfortunately, many businesses, do leave it down to their employees to manage their own individual storage and filing, which we hear all the time. And that's leading to people using different version naming formats and filing information in different folders, which when it comes to, the events of disputes, etc., that information can be really difficult to retrieve. So this poor information management really is meaning that, not only is it a risk for our companies, but employees are wasting loads and loads of time searching for business emails. We're losing business opportunities, or potentially the deployment of expensive resources to make sure we're able to find specific information that we need. And they've been huge changes in the industry, especially since 2011, when the UK government mandated that all government-funded building projects use BIM. And a recent stat we've seen shows that 73% of UK construction professionals implemented BIM into their projects in 2020, compared to 13% in 2011. Now, the US aren't actually mandated to incorporate BIM, but we are seeing a huge percentage of organizations using the practices. So there's no doubt that, BIM is certainly on the rise. And I'm sure, we've got a lot of probably BIM and information management leaders on this call today, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to feeling kind of bombarded by a constant influx of information, and it's the lifeblood of your projects, but only if it's well organized, up to date, and of course secure. So there are a number of different benefits to implementing BIM processes within your organization, but we believe the true power of BIM lies in the I, which is information. So all of the information that's collated and stored at all stages of the project lifecycle, it needs to be visible and actionable. That data can be used to improve accuracy, highlight design intent, and obviously improve that knowledge transfer to all stakeholders, and really just provide that insight into existing projects in the built environment in years to come. But the real issue right now is how that information is actually shared. And at present, a lot of firms use common data environments, but how can we be sure that you're keeping up with your compliance and obligations? So firms are often trying to incorporate better email, document, and information management as part of how they deal with project information and client requests. But we do need a clearer focus on information management as a whole. what we're seeing is that firms are striving to keep up with their ISO 9001 accreditations and 19650 standards, but it can be difficult to maintain without having those right tools and automation processes in place, especially now that everyone on project teams is responsible for sending and receiving information. And the latest international standard of information management on construction projects is, as I've mentioned, 19650, which sets out the activities required to manage information over the whole life cycle of a built asset using BIM. And it helps to, I suppose, standardize how data is classified, data security, and how information is passed from one party to another. So by implementing this new accreditation, we believe that companies can accurately pinpoint accountability and decisions, which leads to faster resolution to cases like we mentioned earlier, the Grenfell Towers, which projects should be utilizing this information management processes, but that's an example of when it's gone completely wrong. So given all the kind of research which we've alluded to on this call, how can businesses use email management to avoid disputes? And it all comes down to maintaining the golden thread of information, or what we like to call the single source of truth. Now, changes in technology are continuing to improve the way the AEC companies work, but it's increasing the amount of data of a business, that a business has access to. So having a single source of truth, businesses can be sure that everyone in an organization has got access to all the information they need before making any business critical decisions. It also provides a much better way of working and encourages more transparent communication, helping businesses drive change more effectively, so that all project and client members have access to one single version of the truth. Now, I'm sure you can all imagine that this is ideal for tracking amendments to architectural processes, construction scope changes, and ensuring all revisions are documented, stored easily, and accessible to everyone on that project team. But more importantly, a single source of truth removes the responsibility of storing and managing data away from that single person or department, which is typically what's happening, which we've seen. So I guess one thing to kind of have in your forefront of your mind as we're going through this is, does your organization have the right tools in place to carry out a proper audit trail to pass the latest requirements? Because when good information management practices are adopted, you can keep your business compliant, reduce risk remediation, and of course, future-proof your project delivery, even if your entire project team have moved on to different roles, which isn't uncommon within our space. And just the final thing to note on that, we did have and saw a new report which was published by the Centre for Digital Built Britain, which found that every £1 invested in information management firms can potentially secure up to £6 of labour time savings, which is huge. So the missing piece of the puzzle, something that we found is normally the critical piece of the information management puzzle, which is often missing, is email. And unfortunately, unless companies have a proper process in place, everyone in an organization manages their email very, very differently. You'll have some project and client teams which are very diligent at filing, others that don't file at all. And that means, without that holistic process, you can't achieve that single source of truth, which I'm speaking about. And when you don't have all the relevant information to hand, you have, I suppose, a compromised view of your projects and client work. And the biggest risk to any company is a false sense of security. So what do we do about it? Well, the first step to creating a single source of truth is to ensure that all project and client information is easily discoverable as and when you need it. And given the vast majority of correspondence is stored within email systems, it makes sense to establish email as a foundation of the single source of truth. So by committing to it and storing all business critical information in one centralized location, you'll have that confidence in your information, knowing that it's always complete, it's up to date, you're working off the latest revisions, and that really will remove time wasted on stuff like repetitive admin tasks, and allow you to be comfortable that you have everything to hand and ensure your teams are fully equipped to make those right decisions. So one thing to keep in mind, though, is that If your single source of truth is not fully complete, then it's not the truth. So just a couple of, I guess, stats just to allude into. So the research found that we did, the majority of information, which is 90% relating to scope changes, resides in email and informal documents. And email is responsible for 47% of scope changes. 5% of these changes only reside in a project manager's head, which is crazy. And alarmingly, 4% of project scope changes are not contained in a digital space at all. So when asked about the kind of most common problems when chasing payments, nearly 1/4 of respondents blame principal contractors' internal processes. So by implementing an email management solution that helps you maintain a single source of truth, what you typically tend to experience are, your data becoming discoverable. We're eliminating that human error through automating those workflows. You've then got established version control. We're going to reduce time wasted on searching for and recreating lost documents, giving you better transparency, traceability, and making sure that you comply with regulatory and legal requirements. And that's something that Arup noticed many, many years ago. I'm sure a lot of you have come across Arup, maybe even worked with them, but they had big challenges with getting staff to consistently file and centralize project information. Yes, they had a process in place, which was a manual drag and drop to a project folder. But in reality, as I mentioned earlier, most people keep stuff in their inbox. There's loads of different ways. People just do their own thing. And for those guys, there was issues when it came to people being off on holiday, people leaving projects, new on projects. But also a big concern for them was if something went wrong on a project, they didn't feel entirely comfortable that they could reproduce that information in a timely manner. So Arup sort of said, well, what do we want? We want a system which users can just jump into, see any email across any of their projects within a few clicks, but we have to take away not just the time spent filing. The biggest thing is the reliance. There's loads of stuff free in Outlook rules, project mailboxes, public folders, so many processes, but you're still reliant on the user, and we had to kind of change that habit. So Arup built a solution called Mail Manager, which is now being used by over 75,000 people across the AEC, some of which you'll see on the screen here. And I guess just to kind of finish off, these are the common problems we hear our clients talk about. Risk is obviously a very big one, but off the back of that, you've got things like wasted time spent searching and filing. So if any of these things, resonate to you and you're serious about the way that you want to improve your information management when it comes to email, feel free to get in touch. We're more than happy to, jump on a screen share, show you how this solution works that Arup has built, that's being used by all those companies you've just seen. So my contact details are there, and I'm going to swiftly hand over to Justin for a Q&A. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Lucy. That's great. So if everyone else can put their mics and cameras back on, and we'll get straight on with the Q&A. Quite a few questions. Some are probably easy to answer, some less so. Casey, you're first up, unfortunately. So can we have decarbonisation in the built environment or fire-safe buildings without widespread uptake of information management?
Yeah, you can. It's just not very easy. I mean, I think we're all looking to get the easiest possible way to do these things, and having digital information about assets, whether they're built or natural, is the sensible way to do things. It makes insight a lot easier. It makes understanding and surfacing, democratizing that data a lot easier in order for people to make those relevant decisions. Yes, you can do it in an analog way. It's just that I guarantee the people doing it in a digital way will get there much quicker. Yep.
Okay. Lucy, I think you've got a question for Casey. Do you want to throw that in now?
Yeah, please. I know, Casey, you're kind of aware of Mail Manager. I think you've used it before. So I'm just keen to understand, your view on the importance of managing emails as well as documents.
Yeah, very important, obviously. Or for all of those things that were on, I think it was your either last or second to last slide. All of the things you've identified in trying to surface information are all of those very, very real problems. I actually worked at Arup for 4 years, so I'm very well aware of mail management. I actually used it at an organisation before I joined Arup, so I'm a huge fan of it. It's a very flexible, capable tool for doing exactly what it says in the tin.
Excellent. Okay. I think you kind of addressed this to an extent, but how swiftly will detailed information management case studies become available?
Well, we've deliberately stepped away from detailed information management case studies. As I said, it's success stories are easier to generate. People are willing to say, I did this and I got this result and it was easy. If you ask them for a case study on a whole process, a lot more people get involved. It becomes a big, heavy thing, and it becomes something that we have to manage and they have to manage. So success stories will just be going out as frequently as we can. We've tried the approach of getting detailed case studies. It's not very easy, especially for a volunteer organisation.
Yeah, understood. We sometimes face the same issues as BIM Plus. Has there been any analysis of the upskilling training needs to meet the information management age? Keep missing the name.
Certainly. I mean, it was a good couple of years ago when we issued published the first learning outcomes framework of what skills were needed at various different roles, but that's been on the UK BIM framework for a while. We revised it, I think it was a year and a half ago. That was then used as part of the Building Smart professional certification. So all of those learning outcomes are covered within there. But yes, it's due a refresh as and when things evolve. But yeah, we've got someone leading the new upskilling work stream within NEMA now. So yeah, very much looking forward to the output from that as well.
Okay. Question from Margaret Saki saying, hello all. So glad to see better information management being adopted. It does make so much sense. Are we engaging with our institutions? How?
NEMA are, yes. The UK BIM Alliance were, yes. We have an affiliate membership scheme. So if you go to the website and have a look at the affiliates, we have various different professional organisations and institutions that are part of that. That enables us to use their membership or reach their membership, so we can funnel our resources through to that organisation and out into their membership, and vice versa. They have opportunities to gather their members' queries, resources, needs, and funnel them back to NEMA so that we can start plugging those gaps. So we're doing what we can. If there's anyone out there who can't see their organisation or their association on the website, let us know and we'll get in touch.
Excellent. Okay. Does the focus on information management mean gaining greater traction with clients? If we have greater traction with clients, they can push the construction supply chain towards wider digital construction.
We'd hope so, yeah. And that's exactly the reason we're trying to do it. There's no point in talking to a real estate developer C-suite about Revit models. They're just not interested. They're interested in how much money we can save them, make them, and generate them over the life cycle of an asset. So we need to talk to them in their language, not in a 3D software language.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of how you might manage language around BIM to make it more accessible? What are the terms to avoid and what might you replace them with?
Well, I think the last answer was one of those examples. But similarly, if you take product manufacturers, again, they don't need to understand about 3D models of things, but they do need to understand what data they have and they already have about their products that they make. The information and data they give to their sales teams for regulatory and compliance needs, for analysis, and all the data that they already have. We just need that structured in a proper way that's easily shareable and comparable across other similar competitors' products. So yeah, it's just talking about those challenges and those opportunities with all the different stakeholders in their language.
Okay.
Yeah, avoid BIM jargon is the
It's what we've all been saying for years, isn't it? Okay. Moving over to Paul, I know you've answered a question from Richard Saxon, which Richard asked if the standard information management plan was available for download. And you've put that, you've answered him directly with that. For everyone else watching live or subsequently, I have actually included that on the chat as well. So the link to that is there, but you'll also presumably be able to find it via the scottishfuturestrust.org.uk website. But moving to the other questions for you, Paul, what are the KPIs for the SIM MP, and how is it performing against those KPIs?
So it's a really good question. I suppose we do work with the Learning Estate Investment Programme team, and they've got wider programme objectives and kind of compliance. So we work with them. So in terms of KPIs, we can have the strategic ones, like have you appointed an IM? Are you created a plan? And then we kind of look in a bit closer into it and looking at, are you using Uniclass? Are you? So it's more, at the moment, it's more compliance than performance, I would suggest, i.e. KPIs, as if that's one way of answering it. But it's a really good question that's stimulated further thoughts in my mind. I think the ultimate ambition is that it can be deployed, and the status of the programme itself is that schools are reaching completion. So that milestone of information handover is appearing on the horizon. So it's making sure that we deliver on that as well.
Yeah, okay. Question from Roll Delflu, hope I've pronounced that correctly. Could the client-based information manager be the same person as the NEC 3/4 supervisor?
Again, a really good question. It's a live debate at the moment. So we're also working with building standards around compliance officers, and we also have construction quality monitors appearing as a discipline, similar to supervisors within NEC. And the role of the information manager is actually being adopted in a variety of ways within the programme. So some architectural practices are now looking to create that specialism within their practice. Some authorities are starting to create it. So there is opportunities to attach it or bolt it on to existing disciplines and roles. So yes, it's a live conversation now, and not beyond it being attached to a supervisor, as long as it's clearly articulated.
Yeah. What have been the most common obstacles to the adoption of SIMP, and how did you overcome them? Yeah,
so through some of the feedback sessions we get from the supply chain, information managers sometimes brought on board a little too late, or not as early as we would hope or like. So i.e. prior to the appointment of design teams, so that we can embed in the requirements effectively. So that's a challenge, but not insurmountable. And there's been some kind of revisit on that. So getting in amongst the supporting authorities to flag this early on. Other challenges is, I think it's improving. It has improved significantly, but the legacy challenges of maybe engaging with FM teams to understand exactly what they need, I actually think that's improved, but we're not there yet on all authorities. So that's vital at the start as well, as we know. So we're going to work hard on that front as well.
Okay, all right. Some questions for Lucy. Does Mail Manager allow everyone on a project team to see all emails?
Effectively, yes. So Mail Manager files your emails to a email subfolder against the project. It mirrors Windows folder permissions and SharePoint permissions, so you can only see in folders you have permissions to see. If there's any project emails which are commercially sensitive, you can of course file them into another folder which only certain people have access to. Okay.
Another one, do you recommend that all project emails get filed? If so, how does this work with Mail Manager?
I think the best thing to do is file more than not enough, because it's always that one email you need. Obviously, if you're getting emails or sending emails like, I don't know, it's my birthday, there's cakes in the kitchen, you don't need to file those. But I would recommend that most project emails, yes, are filed.
Yeah, and obviously a keen possible customer here, does Mail Manager have a free trial? I think
We
can guess
sure
the answer
do.
to that.
Yeah, 2 weeks for up to 5 people, which gives you a really good sort of chunk of time to establish whether or not it is the right fit for your business.
Yeah. Okay, so just running through the final few for Casey, and it says and Neil, maybe that means Paul. Do you find poorly managed information affects the projects you work on?
Do you want to go first, Casey? Or do I jump in?
I can go first if you want to. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's. I think it's unrealistic to suggest that just because you put a process in place that things don't go wrong. And this is again is part of the approach that NEMA are now taking in celebrating the successes rather than criticizing people for not doing the right thing. We're all evolving. This process is a journey. It's not going to be instantly right on day one. Of course, there are going to be people, parts of the team who just don't engage with the whole process. That can make things less managed than we'd like them to. So there are all sorts of different reasons for why, but yes, even on the ones that I work on, there are.
Paul?
Yeah, and just that point around time. So it's what goes wrong now, but what are the legacy issues you've kind of hidden amongst that by not doing it well, and then what might appear in the horizon. So that's also a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Another one for Lucy. How are sensitive emails managed by Mail Manager?
So we kind of touched on it a moment ago. So you either don't file them if they're personal, for example, but if they are project related, you can file them to a folder on SharePoint or your server. You just need to make sure that the permissions to that folder are visible to the right people, and Mail Manager simply mirrors those.
Okay. All right. There's 2 left, which we are running out of time, but let's just so from Faisal Omer, are there any studies, research in place regarding any possible implementation of blockchain technology in information management? Anyone know anything about that? Want to throw an opinion into the mix?
I think Paul will have an opinion on this. I'll follow up, Paul.
Well, we have seen use cases for blockchain. More in payment, which there is a linkage to information there. Lots more kind of interest in that space, but not seen a concrete example of the blockchain information management yet on our kind of at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more to do with proof of concept, to do with payment, to do with materials tracking, smart contracts in some instances, but there's lots of different. There's significant work to be done to understand the processes that are embedded within contracts before you can start to apply blockchain, having automated something to trigger a payment, or all sorts of those things, regulatory compliance and all those things. So there are lots of different reasons or use cases or thoughts about whether blockchain is relevant, and it will be at some point. But we've got to move on. We've got to start using the various different technologies that enable things to not be done manually, or just not exist to be able to make those mistakes on.
Yeah. Lucy, any thoughts from Mail Manager on blockchain?
I won't comment. I'll leave it to the experts.
That's fine. That's fine. I've again, having directed everyone to avoid the chat, I have put the Mail Manager free trial link in the chat function. We've got Lee Johnson. Has anyone working with BIM actually sped up the working program on site? Are there examples of how much time saved on contracts on the contract period by using BIM and not using BIM? Possibly might be more a Casey or Paul question.
Well, I think there are lots of examples of people using information management better digitally to speed up things that they are doing just as their task, whether it's a construction task or a design task or a management task or an operational task. There's lots of different examples of where that has been used successfully. And again, we're using the term BIM as better information management rather than a building information model, because that conjures up all sorts of different things, and people think, oh, well, it's going to take a long time to do this, it's going to take a long time to revise it, and it's in most cases not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
And just to follow up on that, so at the start of the program, we developed a BIM return on investment tool, and attached it was like a methodology for trying to articulate the quantum of benefits, cost and time. So we did have some early case studies, but I'm sure there's further ones that have appeared in industry since then. But again, that's all on the website if people are interested in it.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that this links back to some of that one of your final slides, Casey, about how information management links in with everything else we're talking about in the wider built environment, digital construction space. But what are your thoughts from Hashangi Panchal? What are your thoughts on incorporating BIM with the digital twin?
Well, I authored or co-authored a paper from the UK BIM Alliance probably about a year and a bit ago now, about a positioning paper for BIM and digital twins. Digital twins tend to get more traction in terms of being a much more visual, appealing, sexy thing for clients to grip onto. It's really underpinned by a foundation of good data about those assets, and without that, you know, you're applying technology to data that isn't necessarily built for a particular purpose. So yeah, the usual crap in, crap out.
Indeed, I think perhaps we might just call it there. I think that's the appropriate way to end. So if I can just move to some concluding comments. Just enough time to remind you this webinar has been recorded and will be available on demand via the original registration link later today. You can watch it again or share with peers and colleagues. For more on NEMA, go to wearenema.im. For more on Scottish Futures Trust, go to scottishfuturestrust.org.uk. For more on Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. For more information on the summit, go to digitalconstructionsummit.co.uk. The next session of the summit is tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Digital Construction's role in making net zero a reality with Plan Radar. You can go to digitalconstructionsummit.co.uk to register. So it simply remains for me to say thank you to our speakers for their time and their insight this afternoon. Casey, Paul, Lucy, thank you very much. And thank you to Mail Manager, and thank you, the audience, for tuning in. Good afternoon.